Welcome back to Kevin Toll Reads, where today we are talking Stephen King's first short story collection and arguably his greatest, Night Shift. Today we have 4 handpicked favorites of mine, but any of the 20 are well worth your time. Some fun facts: this was published in 1978. What a great year. It was nominated for both a Locus Award and World Fantasy Award in 1979. Most of these stories appeared in the magazine Cavalier, a Playboy-esque type magazine from the 70s. The older editions are still being sold online with the original stories. They go for hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars today. Night Shift is King's 5th completed works and follows a year later from his release of The Shining in 1977. Night Shift is the first King book where he wrote a foreword, and the introduction in Night Shift was written by none other than John D. MacDonald. In 2020, a deluxe edition was published by Cemetery Dance Publications, which included 2 additional short stories to the collection, one titled Weeds and the other The Glass Floor. This collection spawned the dollar deal, where King would allow aspiring film students to be able to adapt one of his short stories for only $1. 10 out of the original 20 stories were adapted to TV or movie. So buckle your seatbelts. Today we're going to dive into the following stories: The Mangler, Trucks, Battleground, and Strawberry Spring. Stick around. And so our first short story is The Mangler. A summary of this short story: you have police detective John Hutton. He goes to investigate a fatal accident that happened at the Blue Ribbon Laundry. Adele Frawley, a worker there, was killed as she was pulled into this huge laundry speed ironing and folding machine, which the workers titled The Mangler, and it's a very fitting name for it. Hutton at first believes the owners of the laundry or the inspection company will probably be culpable, and is amazed to find out that after the inquest and all of the discovery that the machine was in working order and everyone was absolved of any liability. He also goes on to share with his friend Jackson, who is a professor, that what is kind of going on. And as things evolve and more instances with this Mangler have happened in the past and continue to happen after the death of Frawley, Hutton begins his own kind of personal crusade to find out what is going on. Him and Jackson believe they have found out that there is more to what this Mangler than meets the eye, and it's not just a malfunctioning machine. And so what makes it a really good short story? It is a premise that is so far out there, where you have a object that we feel like has been possessed, and we're talking about an industrialized kind of folder ironer, huge machine about the size of a car, and it's out to kill people. And only King can pull something like that off, and it works really, really well. What starts off as kind of a vanilla story and like, oh, that's a terrible story, it just goes off the rails. And the more that it does, the more that Dutton and Jackson investigate, the more you relate to them and you're pulling for them, and you find yourself trying to offset the forces of evil with this Mangler. It's just really well done. It sucks you in. There is one excerpt I thought was really, really well done. It is, "This isn't cops and robbers, Johnny. The rite of exorcism is horribly dangerous. It's like controlled nuclear fission." And I thought that was really interesting from Jackson. In terms of rating and overall, I give this a 4.2. It is a really good short story. I've read it multiple times. I think this is probably my 4th or 5th time I've read this. It's weirdly premised. It works really well. Its characters are very believable, even probably more so when they're talking about their fears, especially towards the end of the conflict. You just feel like they're they're just and it's very interesting how King wrote that. Kind of a fun fact as well. King, as a starting writer, spent time in a laundromat before becoming famous, and so it was heavily influenced into writing this short story. So that is The Mangler from Stephen King's Night Shift, a 4.2 out of 5. And now let's go on to the next one. And so our next short story in this collection is Trucks. And Trucks it has an interesting summary. So you're thrown into this short story during the chaos. And so you immediately kind of figure out what's going on as you're at a roadside kind of diner, fuel, mega mart type area. And you have 6 survivors that are kind of banding together to try to survive. And what they're trying to survive is very weird because it seems like that trucks and semis have become possessed and they're operating on their own, and they're running over and killing anyone that comes outside. And they are circling and patrolling this diner as several kind of wait in ambush to see if anyone's dumb enough to run outside to try to flee and escape. And it's very interesting. They're kind of isolated. There's nothing kind of on the radio, but they have a feeling that these trucks, and this is happening not just at this diner, but across the world. And so as things start to progress, people try to make a run for it. Things do not go to plan, but things take a really interesting turn as the trucks begin to run out of fuel. And will this mean the 6 survivors' salvation, or will it mean their slavery? And so that is the summary of this. What makes it really good is the opening. I really like this. I liked King taking a chance of just throwing you into this thing, just full blast, and you have to kind of figure out as you're getting information, and I really enjoyed that. It's pedal to the metal from the beginning, no pun intended. The narrator of the story and the caretaker are 2 of the 6 survivors, and they are the 2 that really seem to have their heads on around this. They're talking about, okay, what do we have in food stores? Where's the water sources? How can we kind of stay on top of this if we have to wait it out type thing for help? Snodgrass and Jerry, wowzers, what takes place with those 2 characters is very interesting. This is the premise. You have autonomous trucks. Again, King is one of the few people that could pull that off. I did enjoy, again, their thought process as they're trying to make, a plan of what they need to do next. I really enjoyed that. In terms of criticisms, I thought the ending was kind of meh. I know King is infamous for some terrible endings. I thought this one was okay. It wasn't my favorite ending. If I was the writer, I would have chose it differently, but it was okay. In terms of excerpts, I had one that I really, really enjoyed. It glittered like a yellow jacket in the sun, a caterpillar with clattering steel treads, the bulldozer. And I thought that was interesting for a couple of reasons. The bulldozer is very prevalent in this story. It's a caterpillar, a place where my father worked for many, many years. So I thought that was just really interesting. In terms of rating and overall, I give this a 3.9. It's a solid short story. It's good. It's definitely one of my favorites because I like the premise. Now, there is parts about it that I don't like, but I like the story overall. I definitely like the opening. I like how fast-paced it is. The ending is, again, not my favorite, but the conflict and the characters and the plot really make up for the ending to some degree. And another fun fact about this was originally published in 1973 for Cavalier magazine, and the premise turned into the 1986 film Maximum Overdrive, the only film, by the way, that was directed by Stephen King. It later was adapted for TV in 1997. And so that is my take for Trucks from Stephen King. And now let's talk about the next one. So the next one is arguably, out of the 4 I picked, is one of my favorites, and probably one of my favorites in this collection. Again, there's 20 stories here, and if you've read this, you probably have some of your own favorites, and I picked these. I have others I could have picked easily, I honestly could have done a 2-hour video talking about probably 15 of the 20 of these short stories, but I picked Battleground from this collection. And a summary of this one is you have G.I. Joes that come to life. You have a contract killer who has to battle in his penthouse apartment a gift that he gets that turns out to be these Vietnam kind of army men that are alive and want nothing more than to destroy him. And it it is such a interesting premise that it just really works. Again, that's a common theme here, but it's one of those things where it's like there's a huge nostalgia here as well. Army men. There's a lot of kids that play with army men, especially boys, and so it just makes a lot of sense. I mean, we play with these toys as a kid, and we thought about we're shooting you, and to see them come to life and actually take on a human being. That is just so much fun. So what makes it a good short story? I mean, obviously, the premise I loved. Renshaw, who is the contract killer, can you imagine being him? You come into your apartment complex after what appears to be doing a job. Your front door, your lobbyman tells you have a package. You take it with you. You carry it up to your penthouse. You set it down. It says it is best from your number one idea girl, Love Mom, and something is awry. And you take your time, your due diligence of trying to open it, which I thought was really cool. And then lo and behold, the package moves on its own accord. And then army men start spilling out. And they're moving and running and talking and putting it into formation. It's just really cool. It's just the absurdity of the premise. It just makes it seem so plausible in my estimation that I really laughed out loud during one part where he tries to escape and evade, and he goes into the bathroom and says, "I'm losing." I just laughed out loud. Like, you have these little plastic guys that are like 1.5 inches tall, and they have bazookas and guns and helicopters and rocket launchers, and it's just hilarious. The ledge scene was really, really cool. I liked how they stuck a note under the door and told him to surrender. I thought that was hilarious. In terms of excerpts, I have two. The first one was interesting, and forgive me, but it's like he says, "The little bastard shot me." And I thought that was just hilarious. And then the other one is they had a rocket launcher that wasn't even listed on the box. I thought that was just, Renshaw is just so taken back by all this and caught so off guard. It's hilarious. In terms of rating and overall, I give this a 4.6. It's my favorite of the 4 I've selected. It's really, really good. I've read it multiple times. It's a great fast-paced story. It doesn't take long to just dive right into action, and it's just nonstop. There's a lot of nostalgia based on army men and being a boy. There is a foreshadow, a little fun nugget. If you read this story or you have read this story and you go back to reread it, there is a foreshadow about the package being a bomb when it wasn't, but really was it? And then another fun fact here is Battleground. This short story was adapted as part of Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which was a TV adaptation in 2006. William Hurt played the character Renshaw when they did Battleground. And so that's my take for Battleground. I give it a 4.6 out of 5. And now on to the final short story. And so the final short story in this quartet for Saturday Shorts is Strawberry Spring. It's not my favorite short story, but it's a really, really good one. And it's one that I always find myself wanting to read when I get into this collection, along with some others that are not on this list as well, like Last Rung on the Ladder, Gray Matter, Quitters Incorporated, Jerusalem's Lot. I mean, you can name several. I mean, this collection is that good. But Strawberry Spring takes place in March of 1968. We're at New Sharon College in New England. And Strawberry Spring is a term that the New Englanders have dubbed for this reddish fog that comes out at night, and it only comes like once out of every 8 to 10 years. But what it does in this story is it creates obviously an eerie setting, but it also creates this veil for a serial killer to do his bidding. And that's what they have. They have a serial killer that they've dubbed Spring Hill Jack. And when the body of a girl, a student, is found dead in a parking lot on campus, the police and the campus take extreme measures to find out what's going on as they investigate. Lo and behold, other murders start happening as well, which ratchets up the tension for both the students, for their soon-to-be summer break, and the police and campus security to find out what is going on. And it isn't until the very end of the story that you uncover really what happens. And it's very well done. And so what I like about this short story, or what makes it good, is it's very well crafted. You find yourself, sucked into the setting, sucked into the character, the narrator, his point of view and how he deals with other students and was going about his life and his thoughts. He seems like a very introverted person. It's just very well done. There's this very good sense of understanding. King writes slice of life really well, and it kind of comes to the foreground here. Not as much in some of these other full-length novels, but this is really, really well done. The sense of dread that he creates with these murders, and as it kind of continues to escalate, is really, really well done. And then merging through to how are we going to end this? I think this is one of his better endings, at least in choice. I think it's a really good one. And so in terms of excerpts, I have a couple I wanted to share with you. Spring Hill Jack. I saw those two words in the paper this morning, and my God, how they take me back. And another one was, I saw myself on nationwide TV, the Walter Cronkite report. Just a hurrying face in the general background behind the reporter, but my folks picked me out right away. They called long distance. My dad wanted an analysis of the situation. My mom just wanted me to come home, but I didn't want to come home. I was enchanted. I picked those two excerpts for a reason. And if you've read this short story, you probably understand why. If you haven't, it'll make sense when you do. In terms of rating and overall, I give this a 4.4. It's a great short story. Really, really well done. The interpersonal stuff, the dread, the terror, the pace is all really well done. The setting, how you just kind of melt in with this strawberry spring fog into this setting, is really well done. I love kind of the Jack the Ripper motif. I love how the short story finishes, and there's a lot that when you get that punch at the end, you're like, yeah, I should have seen that coming. And maybe you will. A little fun fact, in 2021, Audio Up and iHeartMedia released this short story as part of a podcast production over 8 episodes. And it was the first time a King story was officially adapted in podcast form. So that is my take for Saturday Shorts this week. If you like short stories, you like absurd premises with real over-the-top emotions and settings, this is your jam. You couldn't go wrong with any of the 20. The 4 that I mentioned are really, really good, really, really strong. But if you want something more believable, the more mundane, with great fleshed out endings, I don't know if this is your jam. This may be a hard pass for you. But anyways, I hope you take the investment to check out this collection. It is one of King's best, and there's a lot to choose from King. So that is my take. I hope you enjoy this, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Talk to you all later.